joining us here on a Sunday morning, a beautiful day.
Yeah.
And we are so pleased to have you here. And as we do during our book club meetings, I hope most of you have got your book. This has been out on Amazon.com for some time now. Hopefully you will have a book. So what we will do, it's kind of we do have chapter 2 as a reading, assignment, but we can talk about anything related to Sri Ashish's teachings. Maybe we can start with some observations that any of you would want to talk about chapter 2 mostly, which is on the self-inquiry and surrender, right? That does not mean that we cannot pick a topic from chapter 1 or any other topic or any questions that you have in mind. And it's a discussion. It's not kind of one person talking. It's a discussion, questions, and Sri Ashish is here who can explain and expound upon whatever our thoughts and doubts are. That's what we'll do that with the format of this discussion. We'll try to keep it about 1.5 hours or however long we'll be here. I had posed a question for this Sunday morning question was that we all talk about self-realization, realizing the self. And if you want to kind of understand the why of it, many of here are research people, right? Anything that we do, we need to know what is the motivation for it. Why do we need to do this? So I had asked this question on that WhatsApp thing. Why is it necessary to realize self? We are having a good life. We are doing what we plan to do. We have these challenges in life that everyone has, one kind or the other. What is so special about self-realization? How this will help us further than what we do now? And let's start with kind of thinking about that question and see if we have any answers to that question. Why we need to do self-realization? Why we need to spend time on self-realization? What it will give us? How this will help our life better than what we have today? Anyone wants to kind of jump in and share their thoughts of the reasoning behind all this?
I kind of want to say a mind state, right?
Yeah.
Like if I wake up every morning and I say to myself, I'm going to self-realize this today. I feel, I am looking for a job. So I'm like, I'm going to get a job today. And I'll just put it in my head. And I just keep that positivity. So I kind of also view it as maybe a mindset. If you put your mind to it, I think it'll help you with self-realization. That's kind of where I am, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of a few things.
Yeah, sure. I think, anything that you are trying to realize, and it could be, your desires that you want to fulfill. You have some goals that you've set for yourself and you want to achieve them. And I think if you have a positive attitude towards it and you believe in it and you repeat it, you affirm it, more likely it will happen because you are in that state of mind. All the things will come together to make that happen. But in this situation, the question that I'm asking, and maybe Sri Ashish can actually explain that, is what he means by self-realization is kind of going beyond this worldly desires, achievements, successes, failures, in a different state of mind where we are happy, peaceful inside, things don't bother us, even though they are out there, they don't bother us. Is that something that you'd like to kind of say that the purpose is?
So I think first, what you need to understand, what is the self? When you say self-realization, what does it mean, the self? What does it mean to you? You're saying self-realization, what does the self mean to you? What is the self? Because if you don't understand what the self is, then what would you realize? Right? So this is what we always say, self-realization. What is this big S? Self is your true nature. And what is that nature? So this is your starting point. So self-realization basically means is to realize that true nature and to abide in that awareness of that nature. Now, once you can understand and you can abide in that awareness and you can abide in that awareness constantly, then what that brings in your life is freedom, is not attachment. Because till you don't have that understanding, you're still attached to what we call the smaller self. You keep attached to your small ego.
I was just gonna ask that, how, that's where I'm struggling. And Zoe and I have been talking a lot. I am struggling with the self, and I feel like for me to take my baby steps to get there, I have to put my mind to it. But I also understand what you're saying, free my mind. Well, then if I free my mind, I'm confused and can't get to the self. You understand what I'm saying? And I know you said it's a journey, that it's not something that is going to happen overnight. But what am I doing wrong?
So the understanding here is that there's nothing to get to. Your original starting point is the self. Remember, the illusion is that there is a mind. The illusion is not that there is actually a self and I have to get to someone. So if you always remember this point, that you are permanent, you are blissful, your starting point never changes, you're still. So then every event or every emotion or everything that's happening in your life is the illusion. It's transitory because you are in your original self, silent and still.
Okay, like you said, like a moving picture.
Right?
We're watching.
So what happens is you get identified with that moving picture.
Okay.
And then you start believing that that moving picture is real. So this thing only allows you to keep coming back. The self-inquiry is to keep bringing you back over here rather than being identified with that picture. At some point.
Yeah, I was looking at it.
So
the wrong
if
way.
each time, even if for half an hour in a day, if you remember, then you'll see that the difference in that half an hour, that any event or any emotion that has happened in that half an hour really does not affect you. Because you're free from that. Because now you're abiding in this awareness. And as you increase this more and more, then you start living your life with more and more of this awareness. At one point, you will constantly be in this awareness. Then anything that's happening in your life does not affect you. Because it's got nothing to do with that individuality, it just is. And from there comes this content. Whatever is, it just is. So what self-realization does, why it's needed, is because this is the solution to all the problems. Right now what's happening is you're trying to find individual solution to an individual problem. But this self-realization gives you the solution to all your problems, because now those problems are not yours. So you don't have to find an answer for it. Because now you're abiding the awareness that there is actually no problems in the first place. So this is why we say that realize the self first, and then everything else will fall in place.
And it is a difficult concept to understand what self is.
That's where I'm struggling.
It is difficult because we do not see it, we do not hear it, we do not read it, we cannot logically prove it. It's very hard because it is an abstract concept. So I think we have talked about in the book also, you can think about self as God, as a higher power, and ultimately what actually it is, which we all can relate to, is consciousness. So I am conscious of my glasses, I'm conscious of this. So the self is the consciousness of yourself. It's a consciousness of not a thing. It's a consciousness of who you are, the I. So it gets more complicated. I think we have to do a self-reflection. You got to think about this. But in the end, if you can have one idea about what is self, it is nothing but the consciousness of who you are. If you start from that point on, then everything else emanates from it. Everything starts from there. But originally, you are that. Originally, that has not changed. It's all the projection. Like he gives an example of the movie on a screen. You are the screen. Everything else that you see is all projection of different things. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, again, it comes down to consciousness, is this subject and object. So this book is an object, and I am the subject. I am reading the book, I am the subject, and this is the object. This is the table, and I'm seeing the table. We need to focus on the subject. If you focus on the subject, then it comes to the question of who is the subject? Subject is the I, or me. The self-inquiry is all about understanding who this I is. Spend some time. This will not come naturally. You have to think about this, who this I is. You will realize once you do a little bit of even half an hour thinking, you will see I is not this body. I is not this mind. I is not this leg. I is not whatever I'm thinking. It's not. And you can experience it if you spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes thinking about it. Who is this I? If I and body were the same, I say, this is my body. That means body is the object and me is the subject. So it cannot be one thing. The body and I are not the same thing. These are my eyes. My eyes. Eyes is something that I'm actually seeing. They are not the one. So I is not the body. I is not the mind. I is not your thoughts. Discover. That is what self-inquiry is. What is this I? And we'll give you the answer. The answer is you will not find it. Because I does not exist.
Do you see my struggle?
Yeah, I was about to say, what's the I to you?
If one uses an example to maybe understand this in a more easier way, right? So we're all born as babies, right? And it's at that level we're all absolutely at still innocence. There is complete innocence. Any baby born anywhere in the world is one and the same. And then we add on values from whatever surroundings and social areas, and we come to a point of what is called a somebody. So you wanted to do something in life. You wanted to do research, you wanted to do business, you wanted to do a job, whatever. And you go to that point. And then you ask yourself a question that, what do I do next? What is it next, right? And then you build, in this process, you build your egos, you build everything around you. And then at that point in time, if you can slowly, again, disassemble all the things you got together and come back to the original state of the baby, that's the, in a way, affect the nobody state. And in a way, it is similar, not exactly similar, but helps it easier to understand.
Yeah. I mean, and the other way people explain this thing, consciousness, be in the present moment. That removes everything else. At the end of the day, the thoughts have to go away to realize this, who you truly are, true nature. The thoughts are the veil, the ignorance that misguides us in understanding who you truly are. The thoughts one has, by practice or by thinking or by reading, you got to transcend the thoughts. And this self-inquiry, that's what we talk about in chapter 2. It tries to, is a method to take you away from all the thoughts that are going in your mind to one focus area, discover this I. That will concentrate your mind, that will point that mind to that question only. And then I think you will discover that the I that you're looking for actually does not exist. And that's the true nature. You're originally, that's where you are. It's complicated a little bit because I think we don't think in those terms. We are thinking the subject, object, what we are seeing in the world, what thoughts are going on our mind, anxiousness, fear for something that we have not seen, something that might be not helpful. And that creates this problem that we never reaches to the level of self, because it clouds our mind with all these other things that are happening. And meditation certainly helps, because it gives you some guidance, and you're trying to kind of have less thought, as she says, that if you're not engaging with the thought, they're just passing by, slowly and slowly they will reduce in number, and then you'll get to that stillness state as much as possible.
Issues, the thoughts are not yours. You made them yours. You believe they're yours, hence they're yours. You believe they're not yours, they're not yours. The question is, if you question this identification, what is identified with these thoughts? Your body is inert, your matter is inert, it's got nothing doing. So what is it that's driving this? Who's driving this? That's what you need to question. When you go deeper inside, who's identifying with these thoughts? You say, I am. But when you ask the question, who's this I? Can you show me this I? If I ask you, where's your hand? You can show me your hand. If I ask you, what's this I that we all talk about? Can you show me I?
You can't.
So if you can't show me the I, then what is this I about? You ask, what is this I, right? To you, what is this I?
Me.
Yeah.
What is my I?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess it's I don't know. I think what we've been talking about, like, it's easy to get stuck in letting our emotions run our life. But when you really think about it, like you're saying, like, emotions have nothing, and we choose to attach ourselves to emotions, and that's why we tend to get stuck in emotions, like monkey mind. Like, you cannot get out of a thought cycle. So, like, breaking that thought cycle would be through meditation and depersonalizing from emotions, but, like, that's something I personally struggle with in general. And then to even go further with that, like, let's say I'm angry. Like, you look at anger and you see I'm angry, and it's just anger. There's nothing there. It's just anger. You detach from the anger itself. And once you do that, it's kind of like, what's next? If I'm not choosing to be angry, what am I choosing to be?
So the question is not about your anger or the emotion. When you say I am trying to detach or attach, question is who's attaching and detaching, right? And if that entity or whatever you're saying is attaching or detaching, if that has no existence, if you can't find it, then the emotion also has no existence.
What is life without emotion?
Try it. See?
Oh, I mean, like, I'm asking you.
So there is emotion, but there's no attachment to that emotion. Emotion is only looked as if it's an emotion, nothing else to it. There's no classification. The issue that happens with people is when you identify with the emotion, you start to analyze it. Why do I get angry? I should not have got angry. That's where your problems start. If you looked at your anger and not get attached to the anger, just let it be. You got angry, you got angry. You didn't get angry, you didn't get angry.
So
Emotions just are, right?
how would you handle if you got anger? Like, can you give us a real life example of maybe you got angry
Yeah, I
at something?
did. Like,
And how did you handle it? But how did you detach from it as well?
so nothing. So got angry and then it just flattens out. You don't think about it. You don't analyze it. Ethan and I had a powwow, I think, 6 months, maybe 6 months ago. So in the previous times, I would get attached to the anger. I would keep going back to it. I would keep, I would walk away and then keep going back to it. Then I would get guilt about it. That why did I shout at him? And the sun, right?
Mhm.
Nothing. Just went out, had the whole power out, went up. That was it. Never discussed it, never talked about it. It was looked as if it happened at that time. It had nothing to do with me. Whatever was meant to be for, the event happened. End of story. Moved on.
Remember that Buddha story, that guy was angry.
Yeah.
Did you say you were angry?
No.
Yeah.
So I think I've told you Buddha's story, right? So what happens is, so there was Buddha was preaching, right?
Did you say pizza?
Buddha was preaching,
Oh,
Right.
okay.
and one of the devotees got up and just went into a absolute anger. He said, Buddha, you're a hypocrite. You say this, you say that. Buddha in his own style used to remain silent. Didn't say anything. Now silence usually creates more angst in the other person, right? So then this person actually spat on Buddha. Just got so angry that he couldn't control his emotions. So Buddha took a towel, wiped his face, and that's it. That was it. And went home. Now this devotee all night couldn't sleep. He's like, oh my God, what have I done? I spat on my Lord. I said this thing. Tomorrow morning I'll get up. I have to. So the entire night, the guilt, the analysis, it all kept happening within this. So there's more angst, right? So the next morning he gets there. Looks for Buddha. Somebody says Buddha is sitting on the river bank. Here's Buddha sitting on the stone watching the river. So this fellow comes and he just gets on his feet. He says, I'm so sorry, Lord. Last night I did this, I said this to you, I spat on you. So he went on for about half an hour apologizing, feeling remorse for this. So after listening to him, Buddha said, wait a minute, hold on. Who are you and what is this about? So it was a moment. It happened, it is gone. There is no classification, no justification, no analysis, don't have to figure
So
anything
you
out.
still have emotions and you have your moments. You're just learning.
So those are emotions that are playing the script, the dream drama. If there is no emotions, if nothing comes within you to do something, right? You even eat. That also is a thought to eat, and then you take an action to eat. So those will happen. But they're all happening without your attachment to this. When you make them yours, they become yours. When you make those emotions yours, they are just meant to happen to play the drama of life. The issue happens is you're now with the roller coaster of emotions because you're attached to them and you believe they're yours, now you're going swinger Sunday with them. Whereas if you remain in the middle, then you are not affected by the
I believe that.
outcome, by the events or the outcome of those events.
See, I think that's where and I think I said this to you, that was where I was struggling. Because I think I said that I have emotions, but how do I justify the self? Like I didn't understand it that well, but now I'm coming from where, like I needed a real life example as to how you overcame it and how you handle it, but now I understand.
So everything as far as I'm concerned is looked as an event. There's no classification, justification, no analysis, nothing to figure out. This moment is the happiest moment. We're having a book club. As you guys leave, whatever next happens, then that's the next happiest moment. There's no analysis of, so-and-so said something or, Michelle said something about this in the book club and should I analyze it and try to figure it out? Nothing. Every moment is the most joyous moment. There is nothing about the past or the future. It's only looked at this moment. And that is what realization brings. So that creates freedom. From freedom comes non-attachment. Because if you're free from every emotion that's happening, it's just happening, then comes non-attachment. Because now you're free from that emotion. So that starts the non-attachment process. From non-attachment, if you're non-attached to everything, comes equanimity. Then you look at everything equally. From equanimity, eventually comes. So realization is key of who you truly are. And your true nature is silent, and it's still. Your true nature does not change. That's your original state only. Everything else that you're seeing is transient. As long as you identified with the transitory nature of this thing, you are in that wheel, you're now struggling, you're going round and round in circles. So this creates genuine freedom. It's not a false freedom. It's not that the mind is saying I'm free. You will know this. This will be experienced. This is not a logical mind saying I'm free, so I'm free. Once you start doing this, you will start beginning to experience genuine freedom. You will start experiencing that nothing is affecting you. You are involved, fully involved, but you're not entangled in life. You're fully engaged, but not attached to it.
On that note, if I can ask everyone here, okay, each one of us have to kind of share your experiences, let's say in the last 2 weeks. And you can disguise it, you can talk about it as it happened. Any moment where you got upset with something or someone, or you had an anxious moment that I think that, because we all have those, right? How did you deal with it today? Because that will give you a relative way of thinking how you are dealing with it today. And if you have the understanding of the self, how that will actually change for better. Anybody wants to kind of share any of these two, anxious moment or a moment that created some kind of a upset mind or something, and how did you, it's not the event, how did you actually deal with it? Did you feel bad about it? Did you feel so sad, or you actually said, no, I did the right thing because he needed that or she needed that? How did you deal with this? And then we can see if the understanding of the self could make it better the next time around those events happen.
I'm the one that always speaks.
Sandeep's in a different direction.
Sandeep wants to share.
And they,
God.
There are a couple of interactions like that where the individuals, I don't want to name them and who they are, like at work life, personal life. So what I try to do is like disengage for some time, relax, and then revisit that thing maybe after some time. Try to detach my emotions from the situation, and then try to retake it in a slow, passive way.
Yeah. So you were just trying to dilute it, give it some time, you come back to it, and then you see if you can kind of solve it, and thinking about it, whether I did the right thing or wrong thing, whether it's necessary for me or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you have a perennial problem with that at the workplace or in personal life, that stays, right? Because you're constantly thinking about it and the problem is not getting solved.
Yeah.
Good point.
Right? You have all of us have that kind of a thing. They are persistent. How do you deal with those? Because it is taking you're creating negative energy in you. You could be happy for those moments.
Yes.
You could be much more exhilarated. You could be much more enthusiastic about something different. But that is eating away your peacefulness, your happiness. And it is perennial, it is continuing. How do you deal with it now? And then we will ask Sri Ashish how to deal with those kind of situations.
Chapter 2 needs so much more of me now.
So right now, I just try to take breaks. Maybe I will go sleep, watch TV, or go for a walk, come back. That's pretty much. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Yeah, till the end. Yeah.
Nutanji, what about you?
I also had like a sort of an argument at my professional environment with someone, and I don't want to name that person,
Yeah.
but and I would say that night I felt very bad because I was like, oh, I shouldn't say this or that, but then after giving some time, I felt like no, it was needed. At least he or she should know that like what I'm thinking about his or her reactions and all that. And now, like a couple of days, I was a little bit disturbed, but then I was like, is it really important to me now? I don't think about it, and I was like, I cannot change that person's attitude or behavior. So it's better that what I can change in myself, like I've been thinking about the downstream steps which I will be taking, but then I was like, I should not think about more about that because this is not important. I have more important things in my life to think about. I cannot change his or her reaction, so I should focus on something which is more important and which is like in my control, which I can do that. So that's how I like handling with that particular situation right now.
So I think that's a great rational way of thinking about it and solving the problem. But let's say 3 weeks later, something else comes up, or a very similar nature or different nature, and you will follow the same thing.
So
Right.
let me put a twist to that. So what happens if the same person comes up and does the same thing again? How would you react? Now you said you dealt with it. What would you do?
She calls HR.
I guess if it's kind of repetitive, then I don't know. Like
I think it would be the same reaction because that's how the human nature is, right?
Yeah.
So whatever she had, she thought about it, that has gone, right? But if it happens again, then it's human nature. She would be again, say something to the other person, and again she would go back and think like, right? So I think it's a vicious circle and it will go on and on, right? That's what
Yeah.
I think.
So realization should bring you to a point where you're not attached to it. So it should not affect you again. It happens. If now the same person comes and does it, because you rationalize it, you've said, look, it's not important to you, right? The reason why you were angry is because something was important to you. You were attached to something, right? You had some expectations of it, and hence because she said something differently, you were disappointed, you got angry. But in reality, as you rationalize it, there's nothing to do with it. It's really, after 3 days, it's gone. So if you remember this and you're not attached to this, then next time when somebody comes and says to you, you just look at them. Nothing to, because what's going to happen is if you say it again, you'll go through the same cycle, as he said. You will again you'll say again, I don't know why I did this. I should not have done it. It's useless after 3 days.
I think I'm starting this bit slowly. Like,
Good.
Because that's why this reaction came that like, oh, I cannot change his or her attitude, so I should not, bother about that. I should rather focus on something. Maybe it's not directly related to the self-realization, but I think I'm learning how
Very
to
good. So change must come from within. Change, if you change, your environment will change. Remember, every event, everything that's happening is a projection of something that you have to learn or move on.
How about, I like what you just said, but what advice would you give if the environment keeps coming back?
So the environment will
Did I-
not change. The
did I-
outside environment will not
ask that?
change.
What about like if you're in an environment that isn't conducive to your overall well-being, like there's a continuous problem where someone is being hostile towards you, you can ignore that, you can take the high road, you can do all of that, but how do you, and this is where I feel like the answer of like ego and whatnot, who decides like if it's important or if you're important, whatever, but like if someone is harassing you, where is it that you conflict resolution? So like ignoring it versus it's a reoccurring issue, there needs to be conflict resolution. So how do you handle that?
Right. So she could have dealt it in 2 ways. The issue is that shout at the person. But the problem is that she's spending 3 more days trying to analyze that. The issue is not what she said to the person in that moment. She could have said and moved on. She spent another 3 days trying to analyze it. So I'll give you another example. So what happened is, there are 2 monks on this side of the shore. So a woman comes and she wants to cross. Now she's a short woman, so water is deep enough where if she can't cross, on foot. So she requests the monks, can they help her? So one of the monks picks her up and crosses the river. Now the other monk, he says, while crossing, he's like, oh my God, what are you doing? This is against our, whole thing, our monkhood, you're not supposed to touch a woman, you touch it. So he's constantly, the other one is this going, he drops her, he moves to the thing, drops the thing, starts walking towards the monastery. This fellow is still talking, he's still talking about it. So when he gets to the monastery gate, he says, look, I've carried the woman up to the shore and I left her there. You are still carrying her.
That's a good one.
So the issue is not with that event. Issue is, if somebody is harassing you, you can say whatever you want to do, but then don't say, oh, did I do the right thing by shouting at the other person? Should I have done it this way? Should I have not said it this way? This is what then keeps you in the rigmarole. So look at that event, whatever is the circumstances, you deal with the circumstance, you move on.
I think Ashish, the question is, if it happens again, let's say 3 weeks later, what then? So you ignore it, then it happens another 3 weeks. So how do we kind of?
So again, I'm saying you're not ignoring the event. The outside circumstance is not changing.
Yeah.
The environment is not changing. The way you deal with that is changing, because now you're saying, look, I'll deal with it, but I'm not attached to how I'm dealing with it or to the outcome of that action that I'm doing.
So you deal with the situation and then you just move on. But if it, because it will keep bothering you.
It shouldn't. The
Because
issue is the bothering point.
The self-respect is there.
No, so now
But self-respect is ego.
Yeah.
Right, now the
Right,
question
now, so that's a difference, right?
Yeah.
Because I can be very aggressive and just say what I'm saying is the right thing. Nobody else knows anything. That's
Yeah.
one aspect of it. Self-respect is the other side of the ego, right?
Okay.
So but in the self-realization state, it should not matter either. But in this worldly life, self-respect matters a lot because it gives you the motivation, or it actually depresses you. And I think the teaching is, I guess, what you're saying is, you just get away from both the situations.
it does.
Yeah.
See, Buddha could have, if somebody slapped him and then, right, if the ego was there, then Buddha would have been, oh, he said things to me, he spat on me, right? If somebody spits on you today, you're like, my self-respect,
Yeah.
somebody spat on me, why is somebody spat? No, it doesn't affect you, which is why you can then let go. The event happened, you don't think about it.
You change your job, right?
It's forgotten.
Well,
After 3 times,
Well, that's what she did.
and I'm happy ever since.
After 3 times, you change your job.
Well, yeah. So,
Yeah. No, but that's a real problem. That's a real issue we have to deal with. And I guess this teaching will actually take you above that. At least it will make you make better decisions rather than being entangled in this day in and day out, thinking of the strategy, how do I do next time when it happens, do I tell other colleagues, do I do this and that. So it might give you a little bit more smartness in a situation if you are thinking at that level.
I know Ashish has helped me, goes back to what I deem environment. I have an environment situation that just keeps resurfacing when he's bored. And I've learned to ignore it, right? There's only situations at times that I have to pay attention if the welfare of my children are involved. But other than that, if you're going to harass me, I just ignore it. And then sometimes I find when I'm just not responding, the situations get worse. But I found more inner peace
It's not your
by
fault.
not responding, because the environment's looking for a retaliation.
Right.
You know, and I'm finding that where's that going to get me? That's going to get me 3 hours, 3 days of no sleep or being mad. And that's what that environment's trying to do to me. And I'm just like, it's not going to bother me. You know? But I agree with like what you're saying. Like all this is helping.
Either, I mean, the way, when these situations come to me, I say, can I do something about it? If I can do something about it, I will take the action. If I cannot do it, it is out of my control,
Right.
I remain peaceful inside because I have convinced myself I will not be able to do much here. So if I can, I will take the action. Whatever action needs to be taken to resolve that problem. If it doesn't, then I said, it's beyond me.
Right.
I remain peaceful inside and don't disturb myself for the next 3 days or 5 days.
And then there is a whole transcending that as well.
Oh, I got a long way to go, dude. I got like,
Whose problem it is.
there's a lot of road that I need to travel
Yeah.
before I can get to Trinity.
But this practice, I think, what I said initially was, if you can start to think about who this I is, you will see for yourself, you don't have to read anything, that you are not your body, you are not your mind. We actually say that the person who's sitting in this corner of the sofa talking is I. You will see yourself, it is not that. I is different than your mind, your thoughts, your body. You can experiment, you do it for 5 nights in a row, 30 minutes before sleeping, 6th day you will get that sense that I is not this, but I always have thought that I is separate. And then I guess the next step to that is kind of what is the source of this I? Source means, so ultimately what you will realize, and I have a very few, maybe 1 or 2 glimpses of such kind of a awareness, where it is just pure awareness of who you are, just the consciousness. There's nothing, there's absolutely nothing. It's just the consciousness that you are. That's it. Nothing else remains. But staying in that state may happen, may not happen ever.
There's nothing to happen. You already are.
You don't, for me, you do not get to perceive that, who you truly are, because the ignorance is so much. You don't get to see that, who truly you are, which is not getting there, but perceiving it. It's like, an example I gave is a statue, and there's a whole dirt is covering the statue. You do not know what the statue looks like, because it's dirt all over. So you're not doing anything, but when the dirt moves, you can see whose statue it is.
Process of removal. Process of letting go. One at a time.
Not
Or
Yeah.
cut the
cut
source
the
of all
source,
the attack.
right. Not to change gears, because there's just a lot in my mind right now. When we meditated that first session back at Clubhouse for the 10 minutes, I think it was the first time ever that I meditated and saw nothing, right? Just nothing. And it was really cathartic. In your years of practice of meditation, like meditation to me is, go to your happy place. I see myself on a beach with a bird chirping and the tropical wind blowing, you know what I mean? When we meditated with you, it was a different level of meditation. How many different meditations did you go through? And do you meditate every day to help to get to the self? Sorry, that's a lot of questions in one question.
So it took me a long time to start meditating. When I started, I had no idea what meditation actually meant. I had never done it in my life. So it was difficult to even sit for 5 minutes. It was difficult. And I did not So I tried transcendental meditation. That was my first one. And they did not teach me how to meditate. To me, it seemed very commercial because they asked me to write a check. And they told me to come to a meeting where they explained to me how this would be. And then I think they made us sit in, quiet. And they said, look, there will be a mantra, so think of some mantra in your thing. And then eventually they got me to a hotel room. And in the hotel room they asked me, one at a time people were coming in, and they said, look, here is a mantra, don't disclose this to anybody, but every time your thoughts start going here and there, you keep coming back to this mantra. So it really didn't do much for me. So I did it for a week and I said, I was broke, so I paid them whatever half, and then I said, that's it, I can't do this is not really happening. Paramahansa Yoga's, Nanda's meditation techniques, I did not get in, so nobody taught me. So I had to get their home lessons. So as I read and started to do more and more what they were saying, I began to start getting centered.
Okay.
But the thoughts were still coming. And I would still get engaged with those thoughts, right? Because their way of teaching was that, look, you sit in a lotus position, you put your tummy in, chest out, and focus on the third eye chakra, which is your over here, and try and bring the focus on the third eye. Every time your thought goes out, you bring it back there. So that helped me more from getting centered, but it was not really helping me with the reduction of the thoughts. But as I did more and more, I could sit longer. It was no more 5 minutes. Earlier I was not able to sit even for 10 minutes. So I was now able to sit for 30 minutes. But what really helped me was Kriya Yoga. So I got inducted in Kriya Yoga, which is the breath control, which is the pranayama. The more I did Kriya Yoga, the more centered I became.
Okay.
Right? The more thoughts came, but lesser I became engaged with those thoughts.
But did that also help you find yourself as well?
Not yet.
No. Okay. Okay.
Right.
Keep going.
So what happened is that Yogananda said that this is a mathematical formula. So he always said that yoga is a science. And why is it a science? Because over thousands of years since Patanjali had written this, Yoga Sutras, people who have done the steps the way they are supposed to be done have found the same result. And he said, look, this is a outward projection. So if you do this, it's a reversal process. So if you do the steps to reverse this, then you will get to the point you're supposed to get to. And he said every time, which is why he said this is a science, but you have to do the steps. What people don't do is they don't do the steps. They say, let me take a shortcut, let me not do this. So he said, look, if you do Kriya for about 8 hours a day, and one Kriya takes 30 seconds, up and down. It should take you about 3.5 years to be able to relax the self. You do 4 hours.
Because
7
you're letting
years.
everything go. So
Yeah, so
you're finding yourself.
So the more you do the Kriya,
Alright.
the more it cleans up the thought process. Right? The mind becomes more and more centered. It is now ready, what we call dharana, which is the 6th step before dhyan. So pranayama breath control is the 4th step in the Yoga Sutras. It's not the 1st step. Right? But even if you take the 4th step, dharana, which is single pointed concentration, which is basically now the mind has interiorized, is ready to go inward because now it's got the focus. Right now it's everywhere else except for focusing on itself. So that comes from doing the Kriya Yoga.
Yeah.
And only when you're ready to go inward can you do dhyan, which is meditation. That piece of dhyan, which is single pointed
so
concentration.
it's a different state that I was in. I was never really in the meditation state.
Yeah,
I was only.
it's just there. You're not the true meditative state,
Okay.
right? And then Buddha defined the meditative state to have 4 stages.
Huh.
And even if you can hit the first meditative and perfect the first meditative stage, you have done a huge achievement in one life. And even in the 4th meditative state, the 3rd meditative stage is called bodhi, where now the clarity of the mind is such that the veil of ignorance you can see as a thin line. And now your mind, it's poking. You can see the other side of the shore, but it's poking. It can't get through. And that's the 3rd stage of dhyan, which is called bodhi. And the 4th stage of dhyan is when this veil finally, at one time, if you consciously do it, it finds suddenly it finds that hole. And then everything, basically now you realize what this is all about. But even in the 3rd stage, the power of the thought, which is the outward movement, is so strong. Because the outward power, if it's not strong enough, then creation will not be possible. There are 2 things that create all of this. One is the power of self-preservation, which is related to the thoughts. And I say self-preservation is your ego. You do anything and everything to preserve yourself. Without that power, how would nature be possible? How would creation be possible? The second is the power of procreation. These 2 are important to carry on this cycle of life. So the thought power, he said, that it's so strong that you might still see a flicker of light in the 3rd stage of dhyan. But don't get stuck onto it because it can still pull you. Still pull you back.
Do you continue now the meditation after that 10 minutes of
I find my
Hold
mind.
on. Let me give her the full thing, right? So these are these stages. So I started to do this. I looked at the mathematical formulas and I said, Lord, this is too long. I know where I need to be. You have now, it's like a tiger has tasted blood. If I have to wait for 8 hours a day, who can do it?
Yeah.
In today's day and age, sitting there 8 hours a day doing Kriya Yoga is not possible for most people. So I said that this will take me, and they told me to start with only 14, so 7 minutes. I said this is going to take me God knows how many lifetimes. So this is when I was introduced, you can say divine or whatever from within, to Ramana Maharaj. And Ramana basically said, in today's contemporary world, it is not possible for people to follow the Yoga Sutra. So, let me give you a shortcut. Instead of sitting there in meditative hours and hours and hours and trying to do this, why don't you look at and question the root cause of all this problem, which is the I. So, question that. That is self-inquiry.
Okay.
So, if you question that and you can understand that, and if you constantly question the questioner and the questioner is not there, then there is no validity to the questions. At some point, the self-inquiry takes you to a point where now that there are no more questions, but the questioner is still there and waiting because everything else has been let go of. Everything that this I has created for itself, you've now non-attached to it. So the only thing left in the last stage is the non-attachment to this I. And that basically means now you're surrendered. So all of these paths will eventually take you to surrender, which happens one fine day on its own. Nobody can say when, nobody can say how, nobody has done it, it just happens.
Yeah.
One fine day, illumination happens, and that takes away dissolution of the ego, I was telling him this morning, cessation of desires, and illumination happen simultaneously. But all of these paths bring you down to this final moment where you let go of everything else except for this little I that is still hanging. And that final one is when you're enlightened. And then after that, you remain in that awareness 24/7. Then nothing else really is relevant. just are. You're enjoying life with complete freedom. Because neither are you responsible for those actions, nor to the outcome of those actions, whatever they may be. Whether you get angry, whether you cry, whether you laugh, whether you slap somebody, they're not yours. They just are. Whether you sit in silence or whether you don't, whether you work or you don't work, not it. Only till the I is involved, it starts analyzing all this. What does it mean? Why don't you go to the Himalayas? Why don't you go? Why do you only sit? Does it mean that we should give up our job and sit in? Relevant. Even sitting in silence is work. Try it. Everybody says, but what do we do? Should we just sit in silence? Try it. See if you can. That's also work. Doing nothing is also work. So this is what my journey took. And yes, I can vouch, if you do it, you will experience it too. You will experience the freedom to truly enjoy your life the way it is meant to be enjoyed and not the way you believe it should be enjoyed. You have put yourself in a box and now you're seeking freedom from that box. But in reality, there is no box.
I have a question about the surrender. So in this book it is written that if someone has a strong faith in God, it's easy for them to surrender. So I'm not able to understand so those who really believe in God, it's easy for them to surrender. So are we saying that self-realization process is easier for them, or they're just at the stage 2, they're surrender but they're not experiencing it?
So what happens is when you are surrendering to something abstract, and the way the book was written, is you tend to hold on to something, right? Because if I tell you how many people actually understand Advaita non-duality, means in the last 4 days between the 4 of us, there's a huge conversation about what non-duality actually means, right? Because the mind has geared you toward duality. There is an object and a subject. So the way I had explained to Anilji to write in the book was, at least there is a starting point. If you are already believing in something unknown, when you go to the temple, really, there's a statue. If you really think about it, what are you praying to? What is God? It's a theological concept. If you ask me, or if I ask you, have you seen God? No. But you still go to the temple and pray to this statue and do all these things, right? So there is a faith. You have faith that there is something beyond that will do something, right? So at least there is certain things that you can start with. But surrendering, true surrender means unconditional surrender. It can't be that I'll keep the good things and I'll surrender the bad things. But at least it gives you a starting point that you have some faith, that you have some faith in the unknown. So what we are trying to do is, okay, at least, start from that you believe that there could be something unknown, only in a different way. At least start from that. So it was written in this book from that perspective. But most people who have faith in God are not going from this purpose. They are only going in the morning, either their parents have told them to go, or it is a family tradition to go, or they're going to ask for something, or usually they're going to ask for something.
It's a learned trait versus an inherited trait.
Right? So, but true surrender is just to realize who you truly are. Because with that realization, you surrender everything else. If you realize that you are permanent and unchanging, right, then everything else that's happening, you surrender. And eventually you surrender this I. But you surrender this I unconditionally. You don't hold on to this I and say, this I When I do get a promotion and I do well and I make money, I made the money. But when something bad happens, oh, the Lord did this. I don't know who did this.
That's true.
That is not surrender. That is called conditional whatever. That is just a feel-good factor. So that is actually pumped up your ego even more. So you're not there. So what is there is just the starting point. Sai Baba used to say two things, right? With Nishtha and Saburi, you will get there. Nishtha is faith. Saburi is patience. But you have to have faith. Even to start on this, you have to have faith because this is something unknown. Belief is factual. Faith is belief in something unknown. So it's a good starting point, but when you go to the temple, do you surrender conditionally or unconditionally? Do you leave the outcome of all your actions to God? Or do you say, God, this action I will keep, but the other one is yours? If you have faith in God, then surrender everything to Him. He will do whatever is, He knows what is good or bad. He will do for you. Whatever it is. I also explain to people in the early stages of my explanation, Atharv, as a parent, you will always do good for him. Your intent will always be good for him. Will you as a parent do bad for him? So why do you think that the Lord will do bad for you?
So when bad things happen, what do? We do not blame God, or we actually just say remain unattached to it. We just take it as it comes. Or you ask God to give you a better sense next time around so that you can improve upon your actions. Because, if you think from the worldly perspective, right, there are always a worldly perspective. We got to go to the job tomorrow. We got to talk to the client tomorrow. Those things are there. If things do not happen, what you pray for? You don't pray for that the client will give you a contract. You pray for what else I can do so that the client sees the value in what I'm providing. So you ask, so the prayers could be, and there's a chapter on prayers in this book as well. So the prayers could be also different. You're just asking. Nobody wants their parents to die. Every day parents die. So God is not listening to them. Everybody wants a bigger car, a bigger home. They're not getting it. Is that God bad? They're not, as a parent, they're not taking care of their children? They are. He is, right? The point is that the going to a temple or praying is praying for giving you the knowledge to understand the self. That will solve more problems, not piecemeal problems. Otherwise, piecemeal problem will continue to come on. How do you get to a level where these piecemeal problems are basically solved in a generic way? In one shot, I would say, right? If you have that understanding of it, that these sufferings, these problems, these pains are part of life, the worldly life. But if you are self-realized, that means you're not attached to it, good or bad. Good thing happens, you take it as unattached. Bad things happen, unattached. You're not perturbed by that. You're not disturbed by that. You're not 10 times happier if you get the client contract, and if you sort of get depressed if you don't get that contract. Easy to say, very hard to implement.
But the final stage of understanding is that there's nothing going on. This is all appears to be happening, but in reality there's nothing going on. But you have to start from somewhere. So this book basically was meant to get you started somewhere. It doesn't mean that an atheist who has no belief in God can't realize the self. because it's his true nature. How can everybody's starting point is the same? It's not something that you are going to get, something new will come. That by doing this, something new is coming. Whether he's an atheist or whether he believes in God, doesn't believe in God, whether he's this, that, whether he's white, black, brown, green, doesn't matter. Everybody's starting point is the same. And that never changes. So everybody will realize, is already realized. That's your starting point. Starting point is that you are realized. So a lot of people are saying self-realization is to realize that there's nothing to realize. This whole process of ignorance and finding nirvana, enlightenment is all happening within the realm of Maya or ignorance. In reality, there's nothing going on. You already are what you're actually seeking to become. So, surrender. That's what true surrender means. That you let go of this dream drama that's happening. You just watch it the way it's meant to be watched. When you go to the movie, what do? In the movie, you're all engaged, there's a laugh, right? But after you come out, it's done. Life is also that way. Now you say, no, I'm in the movie. That villain should have not done this. Sometimes movie the villain survives. He's a very bad fellow. How did he? Now you're analyzing it. How could it be different that the hero could have survived? Now you're got entangled. Movie was for entertainment purpose only. Life is for entertainment purpose only. Nothing else going on. Don't get attached and entangled into it. Two sayings I have: don't take life too seriously and don't take anything personally. It's the biggest joke of all time when you realize it. Everybody is struggling, fighting, doing this, doing that, has to go up, go down, here, that. Nothing going on. Biggest joke. That's why masters, when they were told what happened, what did you do when you realized? They said we laughed and had a cup of tea. Because they could understand it's the biggest joke on the planet, in the universe.
Yes, do you have any thoughts? You have been listening very quietly, intently.
I don't know, I feel like it's a very complicated understanding to like get to that point, I guess. Because from the start you don't think about it that way. From the start it's always like, oh, I have this and I have that. So like after living like that and then like realizing that's what's hard.
Which is why we hope to start early. Which is why they don't realize what great service they're doing to Athar by bringing him to these sessions. Because even subconsciously, he's listening.
He's listening. Yeah, it's true.
It's just hitting him, and as they bring him more and more, they'll see. Today they'll say no, they're not listening as parents. But they'll see in him because the mind is not conditioned. Children have not been. That's what the example he was giving. The baby is innocent, right? Not been corrupted. You're correct. 15, you're already got all the conditioning. Which is why in the good old days they used to send you to the Gurukul. Away from the world life, to go learn about these things till you were 18 and ready to take householder's responsibility. There were very set principles set up how life. But in today's world, it's all being, which is why there's so much chaos. But it is what it is. Even this chaos, you enjoy the way it's meant to be enjoyed. If you start analyzing it, you start getting into it, then you move with what's happening.
I think it benefits your age group because, like you said, there's so much content out there. It's hard to be a teenager, it's hard to be a college student because there's just so many influencers out there pulling you away from just thoughts, you know, and I understand where you're struggling. I'm not saying, but I think it would help your generation greatly if people just stopped and took the time to just think about what there could be, what you could offer.
Yeah, and if you implement this understanding in your life, you will see that when the time comes for you to get into, let's say a job, a career, or your family life, now you can deal with those situations
Right.
very differently.
Yeah.
You won't be perturbed by those situations because you would have a true understanding in implementing this. Nothing will bother you. So this is what conscious living is about. This is what this realization brings in, is to bring this understanding in your daily life. Your outside situation won't change because those are scripted. That's part of the dream drama. That's a script. The only thing that changes is how you perceive that event and how do you respond to that event. And I'm a thing that becomes absolutely stress-free. There is no anxiety, there is no stress, literally there is no nothing. It's pure joy. You enjoy every moment for what it is supposed to be. Even when there are traumatic events, you're still joyous. Because then, sadness, okay. You're involved in everybody's life in that moment for that cause. Beyond that, nothing. There's no analysis, no nothing. So my mother's death was very hard on me because I did not have this understanding. My father's death was not, by that time I had got this understanding. It was not painful. My mother's death was extremely painful. That's all changes. It wasn't that because I had realized that my father would not die. No, death is going to come to all. That's what changes. Not to get, death is it's inevitable. That's the only thing which is sure. Everything else not sure. Death will come. Modern science may elongate it maybe by another 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. But by the very law of nature, whatever comes into being must pass. Which is why self-realization is not something new. Because if it had come in as a new, then by the very law of nature, it had to pass. So it would not be permanent.
I think simply if you look at it, if you very difficult to do, just don't lie to yourself for the next 7 days and see how you feel. Or what we do is, of course we can lie to the outside world, but we can't lie to ourselves, right? But just don't lie. I mean, many a times you feel, hey, I can do it. But you actually can't, maybe. You can, maybe. Just try this, and after 7 days, maybe you'll get such a good feeling. Something like that.
So what are you going to try for the next 7 days? Anything that you like to bring to our practice, our daily practice for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, thinking about it. Is there anything that could help you kind of get to that understanding or closer to what we're trying to achieve here? Anything that comes to mind that, yeah, I think I can spend 10 minutes thinking about this. Any thoughts there?
He's actually in the enlightened state. True enlightenment is here.
Meditation, right? This
All
is
of us sitting.
in the present moment.
Yeah, in the present moment, if you
In the
analyze,
present
he
moment.
is
That's
the most
the
enlightened
ultimate
one.
state, actually. You are not aware of anything but what you are aware of. Very good observation.
Yeah.
In the present moment. There's nothing bothering him, no future, no past, no thinking of the past, no planning for the future. You're living in the present moment. That's what he is doing.
Yeah, so others are bothered. It's not.
That's a good one.
And this is the trick. Like, don't worry about what others are. This is a sport of one. So the mind has a tendency to think about what others are thinking about me, if I do this, if I do that. It's just your mind playing tricks on you. Don't try to change the world, just try to change yourself. You see that the world will change on its own. Sandeep? Any questions?
Since we all started this journey together, semi-together, I guess you'd say, does anybody, I see a change myself, but does anybody else see minor changes in their lifestyle? Or, not their lifestyle, but their everyday existence?
I was watching a video, and one of the other spiritual leaders that I usually listen to him, and this guy, super scientist, was realist. He was, not being kind to him, and he was saying stuff that pumped my blood pressure, and I was getting angry, and then suddenly realized that, wait a minute, looks like I've not learned anything. Why am I getting angry? And suddenly the entire perspective changed, and I started to listen exactly what he was trying to say, and came up with a rational reason, or rational reason actually doesn't necessarily need to be there, because there are certain things there is no rational. So, but at least I could understand what his point was, and not get upset with that. And that I felt there was an aha moment there, that maybe, oh, looks like I'm getting something, if not all.
Right, good. Yeah. Sandeep?
I do that a lot when I see Trump.
It's great.
Sandeep, any change? You've been with me the longest.
Yes.
You get a badge of medal for that one.
I think a lot of changes, especially related to anxiety and all those things. Now I think I'm more relaxed as compared to before, and just how I tackle things, how I tackle with people have changed. If I am having expectations from them, and if they're not meeting the expectations continuously, how I deal with that. Previously I used to get very impatient, but now I'm more calm, giving them the time, and
If I have to say in one sentence, then I would say I'm slowly learning to let it go.
Oh, very good.
yeah.
Which has been the toughest thing for me so far. Yes.
Good.
Slowly, I'm very slow.
I think I have become more positive. Like more focused towards positive thinking rather than having those thoughts which I can't control. I acknowledge them and just let them go.
That's a huge thing. That's a huge thing.
I don't go to like temples and gurdwara, wherever. Like previously I was thinking like maybe if we go to temple we will find God there. And then when I take learners that the God is inside you, part of you are God, and God is you and you are God. So I don't go to like places. I think God is here, God is with all of us. So.
I mean, I have become more contemplative, more think about this. For the last couple months I've started to do the self-inquiry in a more serious manner. I mean, I understood the concept, but the practice part. So I will do the meditation every morning. I do meditation every morning, 10 minutes. But before I go to bed, I do this self-inquiry now more. It brings me to the same conclusion though. You know, if you have the meditation, my technique of meditation, the way what I do now is I focus on one object, whatever that is, and constantly. And there is a scientific reasoning behind it. The nerves create a pattern. Whatever you do, whatever you think, let's say you're thinking about some idol, right? If you constantly look at it with your open eyes or your closed eyes, the neurons in the brain will synapse and you will see that image more and more clearly, even if your eyes are closed, because that's how the brain works. It remembers things. So if I close my eyes, I can see that image in my mind. That means I do not have any other thoughts. That's the practice in meditation. I just have one thought, and one thought is that one image. If I can keep it for a longer period of time, I'm very happy when that happens. It doesn't happen every day. But when I see it happens for 15 seconds, 20 seconds, not 20 minutes, think about it and you try it. Just have one image in your mind for more than 10 seconds. It's a huge achievement for one second, because thoughts are constant. So if you're able to do, that's on the morning side, I do meditation and I'm just thinking about one image, keep it there, nothing else comes to mind. At night, just before going to bed, I practice self-inquiry. So I've not done it, I'm doing it now. So the way I'm doing it in a very systematic fashion. Kind of, 8 thoughts, those are positive thoughts. That actually gives me an uplift inside. And there are 7 thoughts that are negative thoughts, that are bothering me for one reason or the other. And then I start to kind of take each question, or whether 1 or 2 questions a day. And I ask myself, what is this thought about? And think about it, what is my ultimate goal? Ultimate goal is to get rid of the thoughts. What is this thought about? Then ask the next question, to whom this thought is coming? Naturally it will say it's coming to me. When I say it's coming to me, then I ask the next question, who am I? Who am I? To whom this thought is coming, positive or negative? When I think about this, who am I, I'm so deeply involved in answering that question, all the other thoughts go away. I'm just focused on one thought. Who is this I, to whom these thoughts have come, positive or negative? And what happens in that questioning or discovery is that I'm kind of, many thoughts just do not come because I'm just involved in that one thought. So that's what I do now. And that gives me kind of a very, I should say, very peaceful kind of a environment. Because no other thoughts are coming to me, whether I'm in the meditative state or in the self-inquiry state. They all lead to one thing, and I'm just focused on that. So by default, I have eliminated all the other thoughts. It doesn't happen as easily as I'm explaining it to you, but it starts to happen when you do the practice. And my goal is, what is then the source of this I? I know the answer theoretically, that it is just a consciousness. But I'm not experiencing that consciousness only at this time. There are thoughts associated with that consciousness. The consciousness of objects, the thing that I'm seeing. What I would like to experience is just the consciousness, nothing else. And that will be that final stage. So I'm more into practice now than trying to see what this is all about. So that's my experience.
So he's now moving on to the second path of the threefold path, which is to implement this understanding in his life. So otherwise, you can only have an intellectual understanding. You can't experience it until you implement.
I'm intrigued with everybody's different levels of where they are. You know, like I know you can't rush it, but sometimes I'm like, well, how long is it gonna take me to get to Dr. Yoshi? I'm probably gonna be in a wheelchair when I get to your level. You know what I mean? Like,
But be happy.
and I know we can't. Like you said, it's not a race.
Yeah, it's not a race. And from the worldly perspective, from the I perspective, not the self perspective, right? From the I, the world, the friends, the family, the world, right? They're my goal. I'm not saying my goal is to be happy as much as possible during my waking time. Just be happy about it. Not get bothered. Things come every day on to me. I run a business. All kinds of problems are there. But I cannot take them inside. So my philosophy is deal with it. Take an action. And try to solve it. If I cannot take an action, then I say, I cannot do this. But I cannot bother myself with that lingering problem. Either I will solve it, or I tell myself, I cannot be bothered by this. I'm unattached to this anymore. You know, like that. That's a practical solution, nothing to do with self or anything of that sort. It's a practical philosophy of living a life.
So I promise I will not talk because I don't want to be on camera. My view is different, which I tell them. I believe that everything in life is preordained. So my experience of life is everything happens. It's just like in the movie, a script is written, you follow through. So I don't do anything. I don't meditate, I don't do anything. Simply because what we've been talking about here is the self. Self is a view from this part of the thing which we are saying is virtual. He tells me all the time that we don't exist, only God exists. So even if you self-realize, so then you are talking about a self which is related to an I, which is an ego. When it dissolves, there is only stillness. If there is only stillness, then none of this that we are trying to do is really worth anything. It's everything we're trying to do. So we cannot do it because we have to do it. And we have to go in the circle or whatever it is because we are in somebody else's video game. It's not ours. So my view is, yeah, you want to read, we still have to go through times, we do our stuff. But none of it really, things bother, but that's just all of us going through it. But at the end of the day, I'm of the opinion that you don't really have to do anything. You just have to. You are on your path. There will trigger and it triggers. The people who achieve what they achieve from a spiritual perspective sort of get there because they were already supposed to be. There was a Buddha, it was preordained that there would be a Buddha. He did his thing, got there, and then that's it. And my view is, okay, now you're there, so what? It's not like you had any control over anything. So it's another way to just surrender and just sort of, right? So you can still worry about it, you can sit and try and meditate. It helps because you breathe better, you feel oxygenated, there's a cell system around it. So all of that is great. But none of it from the other side matters. All the self-realization, self-inquiry matters only this side. If you're on the side of the stillness, which he says the box doesn't exist, then who cares?
You're already in a state of consciousness. Right?
Surrender हो गया.
Yeah.
In his point of view, it's surrender. He's like, okay, done. You guys freedom from that.
So do you handle emotions the same way?
No, I have my angers, my stuff. I'm learning also to deal with it, so you sort of get better at it. But it's also a realization that you are where you are supposed to be. Everybody's circumstances are different. We were having a conversation about happiness the other day, right? And there's data around it. So when you talk about happiness, if I'm born in bronze and bullets are flying every day, There's a relativity to happiness. That's what was given to that person as a skill, right? Just because there's a serial killer doesn't mean that I can decide to be a serial killer. No, killing is not easy. If we could switch, just because you say I want to be a serial killer doesn't make you a serial killer, right? The serial killer is designed a certain way. So we are all, this is a drama and everybody's got a script. The script is, he's realized that, he's saying his education anyway. But he's also on a script, right? We are all on this side of the fence. We are not on the other side of the fence. And nobody knows what the other side of the fence is, right? So if you listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's a pretty good scientist, he says it's a Russian doll. Even science basically says it's a Russian doll. You peel something, you find another doll in there. You put another doll in there, right? So you guys were saying, how do I, like, when we are, let's say, negotiating something, we're trying to do conflict resolution. So the good guys, the guys who actually do this, so let's say the UAW strike is there, they're very, very smart guys in there. They work with data, they don't work with emotion. Right? This has got to be done. Parties have to lead.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same concept. It's not attachment.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just eventually all paths are lead to the same thing. But remember, we are all on this side of the shore.
Yeah.
On that side of the shore, none of us exist. None of this exists. Nobody cares. None of it matters, right? According to what he's saying, there is nothing to realize with the self, but there is no self, right? And frankly, like you said, none of us exist. Only stillness exists. So if you buy into that perspective, so then what is this about, right? So it's about taking the roller coaster of emotions away through our life, right? That's really what this is about, right? This conversation, the book, everything that we're sitting and talking about is to remove that and this, right? And that's a question of how good you're at it. How good you're at it.
Imani, anything to say?
No.
No. Best place to be silent.
That's the ultimate practice.
Very hard to do.
It's not hard at all.
What time is it?
One.
Yeah, I think if there are no questions, no comments to share.
Ever going on, that's the problem. Like, it is hard to put an end to it,
Then I think we can.
because every question opens up another question.
And that's the job of the question.
Right. My brain is just like. Yeah.
So one question, maybe the last one, right, for the day. So how are your steps, or rather, are your steps different from what others have, gone through? Like, let's say, Maharishi Yogananda, right? Are your steps different from them, or?
So what I did was I practiced each of it.
Okay.
So my steps are not that I read it
Mhm.
and I put it down.
Mm-hmm.
I was like you, I did not believe, right? So I tested everything, and I tested more than what is
Mhm.
provided here. I tested every aspect of what they were saying. We were just laughing this morning, right, about Osho and stuff. I tested
Mm-hmm.
everything because I did not take anything at face value. So whatever is in here, so I took different methods and I created one which I found to get me to where I needed to be. And that's where the method. Right? Now you can still follow Paramhans Yogananda's method and you'll probably get there, but it did not work for me in the way they said, and it's not the problem with the path. I just did not feel that was fast enough for me. So I tried to simplify because there was so much, right? Now you could go through the whole thing and read yourself and understand and implement. But what I did was I took all this understanding, all this reading, all the different paths, and then I said, this is what I practiced, and this was what I did in the quickest time. So my growth, if you look from here, I started in 2016. So it's been almost, right, about 7-8 years. But my exponential, so from 2016 to 19, or to, I would say till 2020, you can say it was like this. And then when I did Ramanna's, it went like that. So which is why I felt that that method was, the exponential, the shortcut. So he said it's a shortcut. I didn't believe it. I tried it, and yes, it gave me the shortcut. And today, I did not answer a last question, is do I do anything? No, he asked me also, what are you doing? What is your morning sadhana? I don't. It's now there are no questions, there are no doubts left. So it's a complete surrender. Now, whether anything else, as he says, beyond this will happen, not happen, I don't know. I can only tell you what I have experienced. Beyond that, I also don't know. Maybe there is another part to it. But where I am sitting today, I can tell you it is an extremely wonderful, beautiful, joyous life. It's permanently like this. There are no more questions, no more doubts, no more opinions, no more belief systems. It just is. And this is wonderful. It's peaceful. It's wonderful. Beyond that, don't know. Something else will reveal after. If it does, I will let you know. If it doesn't,
Ashish, to his point, I started following almost 5 years into probably one of the largest spiritual organizations of our times. But a hardcore atheist who said seeing is believing. And then I went to that path to understand, that excited me to understand what it is. What is that? What does an atheist get out of a world that he has not seen beyond? When I get into that world, I find it's the same thing. It's just represented in a very different way. And millions are following. Millions. It's just 1 or 2 people. The people who claim that they have done 15 years of meditation, 20 years of meditation, get angry at the slightest provocation, are mean, just like any one of us. So, to answer your question, all that you see out there is far away from the truth. As I said, I've seen from my hardcore, ignorant self of, I would not say ignorant, science, technology teaches you to question everything. And on the other side, I have seen the extreme of the spiritual world, the so-called spiritual world. I got attracted a lot to find that what is the actual truth. To be honest with you, those 5 years have not taken me anywhere close to the truth that I was seeking as an atheist. They get me there. So now it's a beginning of another journey to find out what the truth truly is. And when I first spoke to him, a lot of those things resonated into what there are still, I'm far away in terms of getting to that level when Anil wrote and Ash was doing. But there are many things which that atheist in me and the person trying to become spiritual sees a correlation between science, technology, spirituality, God, the all-pervasive whatever, the all-pervasive consciousness. It is one and the same, right? You can break down matter into a number of components or subcomponents, but at the end there will be a small particle, which is the truth, right? And the human cell, it'll go down to the same level. One cell is same. It's given the nose, eyes, but it's one human cell in your body, right? So if you analyze those things and try to put, you shouldn't be thinking logically. That's what he tells me. That's what I have to get rid of. But if I'm able to do that, then I see there is a lot of sync in whatever is the actual truth. I'm far away from it. So I will not comment any further, but that's what it is. So just don't get carried away by, hearing a few good speakers speak, come out on YouTube every now and then, have millions of followers, when you go one inch deeper into those organizations, you see how fake they are. It's nowhere close.
And actually, it's true. What is the best test? Is to do it.
Yeah.
You don't have to take anything at face value. Even what I'm saying, you don't have to take, right? All I say is, this is what I did. You try it. If it improves your life in any given shape, form, or kind, then it's one step better than where you were. Right? And see.
I mean, I have been trying, pretty much earlier before we met, and Nutan can say that. So, I mean, I'm very much different from how she is, right? So she is like, keeps thinking, and whatever has been imprinted, she would, go over it. But I'm different, right? In a way, like, I kind of, fire and forget. Whatever I say, I forget, right? So I have been implementing, but yeah, there are times wherein, you get, carried away with, those things. So,
Yeah. So this is the only way. Otherwise, as I said, you can read, I can read.
Right.
We both can have a wonderful intellectual conversation. It takes you nowhere.
Right.
So most times I now talk about this if you have implemented and then you have questions about, that you implemented and you are seeing this or seeing that. So I can then explain and I can guide or I can, remove your doubt about it. Otherwise, it's just intellectual. Everybody's reading. Everybody is, everybody can. It's a wonderful party conversation.
I think it's probably a personal question, or maybe possibly that you can or can't answer it. But I know all of us. Akash was like the biggest non-believer in you. But sometimes when I see him, I see the light in his eyes that he is changing. Have you seen a change in Akash? Or is he...
So Akash portrays to be a non-believer. But in the heart of heart, he believes.
That's what I mean.
But he's got a conflict. The way he believes is different from the way somebody else believes, and that's okay.
Okay.
Right?
But
I
he's
always-
changing too.
I
Is
don't
what I guess
know.
what I'm saying.
I don't know.
Oh.
Like, but he took a step, he came and had a conversation with me. So he had a 1 hour one-on-one. After that, he's got busy with his life, so I've not seen them that much. But if you are seeing that, then maybe it is. And the other thing that you will find is that a lot of change happens subconsciously. This is all happening from within. It's not happening from outside. So even though you may not realize it, you are
It's
getting
happening.
pushed towards,
Yeah.
if it's a script that has to go through this whole thing and then come back to the point, then in the end everything is leading you back to this. Whether you do it or you don't do it, as he's saying, it will still get you there, right? So subconsciously, anyways, you're being pushed that way. So a lot of times I tell people that you may not realize it, but you may just come here and sit for an hour and not say a word. Just come and sit. And probably you might get more benefit from just sitting here in silence than having this conversation. Because whether you know it or not, I'm broadcasting. Always on. 24/7. So, my role in the script is to push you from outside and pull you from within. Whether I do it by saying, whether I do it through my actions, or whether I do it in silence, it's all happening 24/7 on its own. Whether you believe it or not, that's your problem.
But the path through all these things is the same. Whether you take any religion, you take your belief in God, you take your belief in, the path is all the same. Because how do we say that? Because the people who've either experienced it, or all the scriptures say the same thing. Bible says the same thing. Quran says the same thing. And so then the question is only a matter of time. right?
Right.
Our time. So Ramana says, I'll give you a shortcut. Don't want the shortcut, go to Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, right? So path. So even, and I'm saying that because you brought up Akash, and Akash, to the extent I know, we don't know what goes on in his head. We just know what he says. He believes in God, but his struggle is that he doesn't believe in surrendering control, or at least he's not there, right? But he has surrendered control when he believes in God. He's taken the leap of faith.
Right, for him to keep
Yeah.
furthering his
It's not-
journey, there's
yeah.
gotta be something there.
He's just not
That's
conscious.
my
He's
point.
saying it, right? When he's sitting here, he's not saying that.
Yeah.
He doesn't agree that. So, a conversation that I had with him was, I say it's preordained. He says I control my destiny, right? And that, but I believe in God. So the God has provided me with the tools to control my destiny. Hence, I control my destiny. Right? Now, I don't know any better. Neither is he. It's a leap of faith. But at the end of the day, what is that destiny? Right? Just like you said, what is I?
Right.
What is that destiny? When we both sort of sit there and say, we are going to the same destination.
Right, exactly. Yeah, see.
And
you know,
remember, there is no destination.
Yep.
You never left.
Yeah. But I was kind of brought up with the same belief that your life is destined. It's already been carved out for you the minute you were in utero. You know what I mean? The minute you were born. So I believe in that theory. On that, your life, your path has already been carved for you. It makes acceptance easier. It makes understanding easier, and I can also understand where people are like, well, if that's my path carved out, then I can control my destiny. Sometimes you can, but sometimes you can't.
So this is a debate we have constantly. You didn't control who your parents were.
Right.
You didn't control where you were born. You didn't control where you went. All of us were born in India. I never thought I'd be sitting here 30 years later.
In Hamilton.
Yeah. I didn't control who I met. Right? The attraction is the attraction. You may have asked somebody out, but you didn't control the attraction.
Right.
So people confuse that when I don't even control when I get to the stop sign. If the government says I've got to go right, I go right. If I go left, I get to left. I am able to go left or right. I am able to choose, but I don't control it. So then what do you control? And the confusion is that I have two hands, I have a mind, I can eat. But those are tools. Yes, you have been given certain tools to survive. You have been given the instinct to survive. That is the natural instinct. Right? So you do those things because you have the tools to go through this process. But if you look at the macro level, you don't show me 1%. Like he says, if you can control stuff, stop breathing. Control your breath. You can control your breath, right? Can't. So if you look at the higher level, none of us really control it. It's not about me saying preordained and I'm going down this path. Because I'm going through that process, I can give the tools. Because I control the tools, I say I can control it. But that's not the control.
Yeah.
That's the navigation.
But Manish, to your point, I think the only thing that is preordained, which has to happen to all of us, we're gonna die if we were born. If we were not born, then there is no question of death.
That is the only certainty.
Absolutely, that's preordained for each one of us. How we reach that path, that end point,
But
Maybe
you don't
different.
control the time.
So
maybe different.
that's a good question. I mean, if we gotta go, we gotta go. But as someone who was an atheist, did you believe that your life was predestined or no? Because you're a scientist, you make your life.
So the way I think of myself, and even deep today, and probably that's what keeps me going, is I'm a self-motivator. So what I will do is I will say, that's what I was telling her, that's also a lie. I'm telling myself, hey, you can do this. Come on, you can do this. Hey, there's nothing wrong. Everything is perfect. But I think, to answer your question, I am positive by nature. Hence, negativity comes much later to me. That's how that got built. I don't know whether it was atheism or whatever it is. I think in that way. So I'm always, anything that comes to me, I first think of the positive part and then think of, it's not that I don't get affected by any thoughts or anything like that, I do. But that's how I'm built, right? But the only question that has always come to my mind is that there are two ways. Each one of us in this room, we will die. That's certain. We never think of it. We will die today, tomorrow, matter of years, couple of years more, couple of years less, doesn't matter. Now, in order to make our lives better, there are two things you can do. You can say that, how do I get into an anti-aging kind of stuff and get one more day to live? Or is this my last day and I'm going to just enjoy it as I am, right? Whatever I can do about it. So these are perspectives of life. But the thought that constantly keeps coming to my mind, to which I have not found any answer yet. And I think it was very well, my father came from comparative literature and used to talk about Shakespeare. He used to say that if death is the end of life, why should life and labor be, right? So that's a question I need to find an answer to. If I am alive. If I am not alive and I was not born, then death doesn't matter to me. But if I was born, then why am I going through this journey? For what? Which script? What script? It's written. The script is written. One common constant, you're gonna die.
But the question is who, not why.
So, if going by the philosophy, if I was not born and this is not real, then there's no question of death. And I'm all pervasive. I'm everywhere, right? Then this question itself doesn't arise, right? But if I was born, then why this journey? For what end objective? How does it matter to even the superconscious if I am alive or dead, or I live 80 years or 50 years or 40 years or 30 years? So what does he achieve by it? Anyway, those are complex questions.
No, good. That's how you start asking these questions. Good. Now read, come back and ask me more questions when you come back.
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Then I will answer this particular question of yours. Good. Let's have some macaroons.